Yo, what's poppin'? It's your boy. My bad. It's your king. Young sizzled butter and sugar, cause we got that caramel complexion, aka young gold peak sweet iced tea, cause I'm nice with it. Your bitch gonna take a sip of me, okay? That's all I gotta say. We in this. I wanna make this video like quick. Also, let me like fix this. Hold on just a second. Transform, fit the screen. Okay, bet. I'm gonna make this video pretty quick and concise for the most part. Like I'm not gonna go too into detail. If you have like further questions, like ask me in the comments or on Discord or something. But I'm gonna like briefly go over like the grand ticket pick priority. If you could even call it priority, it's just like some general recommendations based off of like my experience and like my knowledge of the game. Um, so I'm gonna get right into it, right? So I believe it's from Orologia and down. Yeah, okay. So starting with Orologia, I would say this character, if you play Dark, is like high priority. Like if you are a Dark main and you don't have Orologia, get Orologia. It's pretty like it's that easy. Um, of course, this is dependent on if you have like HalMal or Fediel or let's see, Literally. I wish I could sort this by like element easier. I probably should. It would probably be way easier to do it by element, so I could like see what each element has. But I would say the only kicker is like if you don't have Fediel, in my opinion, Fediel is more useful than Orologia. Especially for like high level content, because I mean pretty much every content you use has Fediel, whether it's Fa Zero, Sub HL, Hexa, uh, situationally Cosmos, things like that. Typically have Fediel. Cosmos Fediel full auto by the way, not for manual. I don't really see her for manual, but yeah, Orologia, the weapon is very strong. Whether it's burst or high level, getting the death strike for extra echo to do hits easier. Um, very strong weapon, very strong character. I want to go into detail about like I guess in general, I guess I'll briefly cover like what they're used for. I'll do like category like full auto, burst, and HL. Orologia as a character is pretty much primarily used for HL. They have good full auto potential, like for what is it, Marshall Mystery Man, whatever the fuck that guy's trial. Um, they're good there for full auto as well, but for the most part, they're like a high level character. You don't really use them for burst either. But with that being said, again, their weapon is very good in full auto and burst and high level, so I would say this is a very high priority character. If you don't main Dark, let's say like Dark is your second or third favorite element, or like you have all your other elements decently fleshed out, but you're missing, Orologia as a character, I would say it's worth picking up. Um, if you're planning on like filling for Dark high level, but if you're not playing Dark high level, then I would say Orologia is a skip. Um, if you're planning on building Hades and your other elements are pretty fleshed out, then I would say yeah, Orologia is like a necessity just for the weapon. Which brings me to the topic of second or third Orologia. Like if you're a Dark main and you only have like a single copy or a second copy, how valuable is the second causality driver or the third? I would say second is a pretty big upgrade because it enables you to do things on, I believe Hexa you can do without Shiva, the putting Assassin on your MC and then having the Echo from Death Strike give you that 50%. I think even like with Excalibur, it does it like by itself with Excalibur, but it's still pretty useful. And also for the grid piece for triple attack, it makes that a lot easier because there's some scenarios like in what am I thinking like Fall Zero where having that extra TA for GTA is like very important for that raid. Um, so I would say second is pretty big. For most scenarios, like in high level, you want to use one, but for burst, you usually are using two. There's some situations where you're using three in burst, but it's very niche. It's like FS in light. You very rarely like use three. I think we'll get to FS later, but I would say if you're a dark main and you're getting your second one, it's worth it. If you're like really invested in dark, that's the only time like a third one is useful. Quote unquote useful. It's just like you'd rather have it than not, and you're in a situation where you need three and you don't have three, and you're like a dark player, it'd be kind of awkward. Not talking about myself. But yeah, that's like my run of Orologia. Next is Fenny. Fenny's staff is very, very, very good. I think if you are a fire main, again, well, I'm not even gonna like lead with that, but I guess maybe it's important. If you're a fire main and you don't have Fenny, I think Fenny as a character, as far as I know, I'm not very extensively knowledgeable in fire, so I'll keep this very like general. I know you can use her in like Fa Zero, um, but I don't think you, as far as I know, I don't think you really use Fenny anywhere else. You use her in like Fall Zero. I think maybe I've seen her like in like a Siete full auto, like full auto solo, not full auto like join. Um, as far as I know, that's like mostly what she's used for. She could be used for other things. I'm not exactly sure, but I know for the majority of people, people are ticketing Fenny for her staff. I know I've done it for myself as well. I ticketed her staff. The weapon's very strong. You use it in full auto and burst. It has like burst potential for Bahamut high level if you're doing the Mana Diver setup with Womdis, Alanon, and Percival. Um, you can use it for Mana Diver to do Fa Zero, or I don't think you would use it in Hexa. You could use it for sub HL. I think Hexa is a bit difficult because you kind of want to. It'd be hard to do the hits and stuff with it, but you definitely would primarily use it for like Mana Diver. Wherever you're gonna use Mana Diver, you're gonna want to use Fenny Staff. Whether you're making Mana Diver work in Hexa, you would want to use Fenny Staff. It's a great sustain weapon as well. I believe it heals. I'll pull it up here. I usually don't have the wiki open, so I'm not used to navigating it. Um, it boosts the heal cap, and yes, it does heal. At Singe 7 or higher, so that's pretty good. Um, it also gives charge bar. I did not know that, but yeah, this weapon's cracked. Even like for Ogi, giving mirror image is situationally useful. And big crit is also pretty good because it pairs up well with Overrider as well, since Overrider also gives crit. So pretty good weapon, pretty good weapon. I would say overall in terms of full auto burst high level, Fetty is like not a burst unit. Um, Very niche full auto unit again for like Siete solo full auto, which you don't even need her for that. And in terms of high level, again, I don't think she sees too much usage unless you're doing like Fa Zero. I don't think she's like used like that in Hexa and Sub HL. Could be wrong. Don't, do a little bit of your own research too. This is just like a I don't know who to ticket. I'm panicking. Let me like see if I can get like an outside opinion. But yeah, if you're ticketing this character, you're primarily ticketing the weapon, not the character. In terms of the weapon for high level burst and full auto, very strong full auto weapon. Again, it has burst potential. It's very comparable to Simibito in Bahamut high level in terms of numbers. That you can definitely um use it to farm bars. And high level, again, very strong. Fire Mana Diver in Fa Zero is very common. In terms of Hex, again, in Hexa and Sub HL, I'm not sure. You can definitely run Mana Diver in Sub HL, but in terms of Hexa, I'm not too sure. I don't play fire like that personally. It's like one of my least favorite elements. I think Earth, like, it's right there with Earth almost. Like, I like fire a little bit more, but yeah, I avoid this element kind of like to play. So this is just based off of what I know from like some other fire mains that I talk to and things like that. So next up is Sandalphon. So this character I never see used. I saw this character get used for like I don't even know like Fediel full auto because he has like is this the one with the healing shit? Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong Sandalphon one. I don't even know. This character was pretty good. Like you like actually use this character on release because his Supreme Wings buff was pretty good for giving Echo and like defense buff to units. The dodge all was situationally useful. If you ran this in like sub HL, the boss has God Sight. Fa Zero, the boss can get God Sight. Hexa, if you're fucking up your like omens, could get God Sight. Um, so this is like situationally useful. The extra sustain from Ogi as well, plus like the defense buff you get from Supreme Wings was pretty good. Um, of course, this reduces damage taken. Does this get applied to all allies? I don't think this one does, but this one definitely does. GTA was very good. I think even if you're missing some units, like you could use this unit for Fa Zero in Light if you're like really missing stuff like Horus, Xmas Zoe, God forbid Cosmos. Characters that are common in the Ogi comps that Light runs. You could definitely run some God, what do we used to do in the back in the day? Like Omyoji, even like Kengo, you could probably slot him in kind of because he gets like this skill 3. Um, Trying to think, what else would I use this guy in? That's pretty much it. And I mean, especially like nowadays, you don't use this character like at all. Like you, high level light is dominated by Horus, Nahon, and God, what was the other Ogi character? Let me pull up my game real quick. I got I got the comp. Cosmos, that's what it is. Cosmos, Horus, and Nahon. Or you could swap Nahon for like Xmas Zoe, or like swap somebody for Xmas Zoe. So that's pretty much what light high level is dominated by. In terms of like light burst, I don't burst too much with light. I'm sure it's like Mugen, Florence, Nahon, or like Mugen, Nahon +1, something along those lines. He's definitely not the +1. In full auto, he's definitely not used in full auto like that. He used to be. I remember even in God, what's that dog shit raid called? Osiris and stuff like that, like the in dead raids, like he was used there for a little bit, but that's because light didn't really have too many better options in particular. Um, so I would say in terms of this character's like usage, if you're caught up to date on your light, the character's pretty much not that. I'm not gonna say he's not great, but you're not gonna use him because like why would you unless you're using him for fun? Um, But if you're like really lacking in light characters, he has like some potential to be used. Like if you're missing like the Fa Zero or like the Hexa comp or whatever, you can definitely run him in like those raids and be fine. Um, it's just the case of if you have the better units, you don't really like want to use this character. Um, so in terms of burst, I'm gonna say he's not really that great. In terms of full auto, again, not really that great. High level, usable if you're missing pieces for the main light team, but if you have those characters, then I'm gonna say that he's like just okay for high level. In terms of his weapon, FS, very core to the element. I would say if you have one, it's like whatever. You definitely want two. Um, with Sandalphon backline and then Max Luo for single sided, either with extremity or sagacity key. Um, Even if you're running double-sided, 2FS is just pretty good. If you have like light Amino with the superlative pick ticket, it makes the weapon better because you can easily or more easily attain 100% crit, especially on double-sided. Um, I think that's it. And then 3 is really niche. I mean, 3 was used on like Nightmare 200 back during Light Guild War, and like even that was like pretty niche. You don't really ever use 3. There might be a niche scenario where you're running 3 and you're enabling it with Mugen skill 2, but for the most part, I think 2 is plenty. 1 is okay. 2 is like pretty much optimal, and then 3 is like very, very niche. I think it's in the same boat as Causality Driver or Logi's weapon, where if you're like a light main, grabbing 3 is never a bad idea, because you don't want to be that guy that's like, trying to perform in your element and you're like missing that weapon. Me. So that's something to keep in mind. So because it's such a good weapon, it's strong, it's core, I'm going to say that it is very valuable for both burst, full auto, and high level because it is used in burst, full auto, and high level. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much Sandalphon. Uriel, God, keep this character away from AJT because that's an hour video guaranteed. I know that when that boy was making the grand uh pick video, I haven't watched it. I'm gonna watch it after I make mine because I didn't want to be like influenced or whatever. But that boy probably spent like a good 20 minutes on this character. I don't give a fuck, bro. This is so funny. But Oriole, the character's I'm not gonna say it's clunky, but I mean the character itself. I'm gonna say the character itself is not all that great, but because of the situation with Earth's characters, I'm gonna say that he's within the element itself. He's good. As much as Earth players complain about having to use Uriel, you still use him because, again, within the confines of Earth, he's a good character. Like, he's kind of the best option that you have for some situations. Even just as a back row unit, enabling single-sided extremity or sagacity key, he's very good for that. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and say he's good for bursts as well. There's some situations where you can just apply his skill 3 for the double strike in GTA. I think I've seen it used in like Diaspora, which is pretty relevant. Diaspora for sure. Um, I don't really use him in Leviathan Mare. I don't think anyone uses him in Leviathan Mare. I mean, we can check here just to like verify, but yeah, he's quite literally just a back row character. Quite literally. So yeah, that's something to consider. You're not really gonna be using this character like front row too much. Even in like high level content like Fall Zero, Hexa, like you're not running this character front row. He's just pretty much a back row enabler for your grid. Um, with that being said, his weapon is very good. It's a PNS type weapon with the supplemental damage and the damage cap boost and the voltage. So pretty good. Um, I think all of these weapon types, you just want two of them. Maybe nowadays you're typically running like one, but it's still good to have two. For most like burst scenarios, you're probably gonna run two. When you get into like high level and full auto, it can get like niche depending on the raid you're running. So you're more likely to run just one in those situations. But there are still times where you can run two and it's fine if you're missing like specific grid pieces and whatnot. So I would say that if you are a Earth player, Uriel is like a must grab. Which I'll say that about quite a few of these grands, whether it's for their weapon or their character. But I think Uriel as a character, definitely a must grab just to enable some of that single side capability, especially with Orologia being in the game. The summon Orologia. Hunting is very strong, and I think despite the call of Orologia giving MC double strike, just the call giving MC like the big skill one nuke plus like the additional buffs and whatnot, kind of helps enable Hunting and MC to become like stronger. So I think having him to enable, extremity key on single side is pretty helpful. I see Beelzebub main a lot as well, or T0 main a lot in Earth, so that's something to keep in mind as well. For a lot of Earth full autos, I see like Lucifer, like friend summon, or if you don't have your own Lucifer, or if you do have your own Lucifer, sometimes main summon if you're missing like your 250 Titan. So I think he's a very big pickup if you're a Earth player. If you're not an Earth player, or rather if you don't play Earth like that, I think he's definitely a skip. There's gonna be some characters where I'm like, if you don't play that element like that, they're gonna be a skip. I think Uriel is one of them, but I'll argue against it. We'll see here, like Percival, even if you don't play that element, and like, let's say it's like between like Percival, Womdis, Lich, and like I don't know GK and Mugen, I'm gonna say get Percival as opposed to getting like a duplicate of something because when Guild War comes around or when something comes around where you're like required to play fire, you're gonna want that character. I think Uriel is one of the cases where if you don't play Earth but you're forced to play Earth situationally, whether it's like you're filling in for like a high level room or like Guild War comes around, I well he wasn't really used like that in Guild War. So yeah, I'm gonna say he's not very like if you don't play that element like you need him or whatever. I would argue that someone like Percival is like when you are playing that element, you have to have Percival. I'm just gonna say you have to have him because without fire without Percival is like not even fire. It's a different element. Um so yeah, for burst, I'm gonna say Uriel's like whatever. It's like negligible outside of like some setups where you can run him. Full auto, again, I'm gonna say he's negligible. As a back row piece, he's good. Hmm. Well, I guess actually frontlining the character. He's negligible in most of these situations as a frontline. As a backline, I'm gonna say he's good. So if you're looking to backline him again to enable that single side, he's really good. In high level, I don't ever see this character used that. You never frontline him. He's always back row. So again, he's really good for the back row. And in terms of his weapon, if you already have one copy of it, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's like decent enough. You can situationally use Alex Dagger. You can cage that and have that be like a supplemental Oriole Gauntlet. Otherwise, if you just have nothing else to ticket and you're like missing this piece, grabbing a second uh was it Pillar Driver isn't like a terrible idea. That's only if you like play Earth. Like if Earth is like your top three elements, I would say it's worth getting like a second one because you're probably gonna at least play the element. But if you don't even like play the element like that, there's really no point in getting that second one. You probably have a better pick in mind. God, this was supposed to be quick, and now I'm realizing this is not gonna be quick. We have like quite. I'm like taking too long to explain characters. I'll go through this faster. So Zeta, for burst core, for full auto, she's very good. For high level, she's very good. I don't know if she's particularly core. Um, because you're always gonna run Percival. You can most of the time run Zeta, and then I mean even if we take a look here at let me see. Let's just say Dark Rapture because that's the raid most people are looking to get into and upgrade their Opus and whatnot. So yeah, I mean Percy Zeta. I think Percy Zeta tends to be the core, and then you just flex the third slot, whether it's Noah, Frau, Fenny, Sylph. You kind of just like flex these characters, um, in that third slot. So I guess I'll go ahead and say she's core just based off of this and based off of what I've seen. Because also when I play Fire, it's Percy Zeta. I'm trying to think of like if you could supplement the character, but I guess that's not what this video is about. It's mostly like, is the character good? Should you pick it up? If you're a fire player slash main, yes, 100%. Zeta's like core tier element. I would grab it, especially her weapon. Every Exalto character, I'm gonna say you at least want two of their Exalto, especially if you play that element. So yes, grab Zeta. If you're a fire player, yes, grab Zeta. If you're like again between like it gets trickier. Like if you're missing like Zeta and Gabriel and like Kaguya and like what's another like Exalto type unit? Oh, it's gonna be like higher up, huh? Like Orologia. I'm gonna say that's more difficult. At that point, it's whatever brings you the most value to your account. So again, if you play it a lot more fire than you do water, wind, and dark, pick that. If you play a lot more water than fire, wind, and dark, pick Gabriel. That's kind of how I'll base this off of. Um, but in terms of a standalone pick, Zeta is like an outstanding pick for the character and for the weapon. And if you only have like if you already have the character but you're missing like your second overrider, I would say it's definitely worth getting a second overrider, especially if you are a fire main. If you're just looking to flesh out your grid, it's definitely something you can do to flesh out your grid. Um, because again, it enables single side, which again is like single primal and then like another summon, whether it's like Lucifer, Beelzebub, or T0, whatever. Um, and then third overrider is core for burst. I don't think it's used very much in high level content. I guess I'm fucking lying. Two, two, two. Oh, maybe it's specifically for this setup, but yeah, I mean, two is generally as for all these Exaltos, two is generally gonna be optimal. Three is gonna be like niche, so you can just run any of these other setups and you'll be fine with two. Um, but yeah, I would say that that is the discretion on that. And of course, for her weapon, for burst core, for full auto core, for high level core, you definitely want the character and the weapon. Um, moving on to Gabriel. This character is disgusting. I know a lot of you were asking me about like Water Guild War and like what do I do? I don't have Gabriel. If you don't have Gabriel, this is gonna be a take this with a grain of salt. If you care about Guild War, like let's say you're not just the oh, I'm gonna get top 90K and I'm done. If you're like in a competitive crew, which I mean if you're like a competitive player and you don't have Gabriel already, little sus. Maybe you're just got like maximum unlucky, but that's again to me that's crazy. Not throwing shade, I'm just saying like this character is disgusting. Um but if you're looking to be competitive in Water Guild War, let's say you're going for a top 2K, or you're just looking to push beyond that 90K barrier and see how much you can do, this character is a must-have, dog. You're save yourself the pain, trials, and tribulation. Get this character. Um, Even outside of Guild War, this character has so much value and benefits your account so much because, as far as I know, water is pretty much the fastest full auto element in the game for a lot of these like general raids. Um, that includes things such as like Belial full auto, like your Belial and Baby Fall, like Fall Hard. Water is the fastest full auto setup for that, as far as I know. And even if it's not the fastest, it is still fast. Um, I full auto Bahamut high level with water. It's like 7 minutes, 8 minutes, somewhere in that time frame. So it's very good for that as well. Lindworm, it's very fast, like 4 minutes. For that, even without like investing in like Horace Velger and stuff like that, like you could just mostly you mana diver with this unit. But this character is disgusting. For burst, let me think about this. So for burst, it's dependent on whether you have Horace Velger. Because if you're running Horace Velger, then you're probably not fronting Gabriel. Your back row are most likely, but front row not really. For mana diver or any other type of like bursting potential, if you're like full autoing, she's very good for bursting like full auto. Well, I guess that's a different category, but I guess for full auto, she's very very good. For simple burst like zero button, one button, or you're looking to like I don't know use like Horace Vilger for like Bahamut high level or to blow up sub HL. I'm gonna say she's like not the best for that. Even in high level content, she's not really the best. Sub HL she's very good, but Hexa and Fall Zero you pretty much just run other units. You run like things like Tefnut, Dragon, Hestelia, Europa. Um, I'm missing one very good unit in that mix. Let me look. You could even run near. Oh, and of course Yachima as well. She just released, so she's very good for that. You're pretty much never gonna front row Gabriel outside of like full auto content or like very niche burst setups because she was used for burst in the last Water Guild War that we had in 2024. You would front row her for some stuff like that. Um and of course, again, another PNS type weapon in the Gospel. So, especially with Yachima, now that we have Exalto and Water, and it being a crit Exalto, typically with those crit Exaltos, the grid space is very, very tight. So, I'm going to say having one of them is good enough, especially if you're running like some type of like Praise Filger setup. You're not even really going to use this weapon with Praise most often, or more often than not. But if you're not running Praise Filger, you'll use two of these often, but you'll probably use one just as often. So I would say, because if you don't have one, you don't have the character. So I'm gonna say get the character. It's get the character, and you'll get one of these with it. And if you're looking to get a second one, I'm gonna say it's worth it because again, Water Guild War is coming up, and you don't want to be that guy that is gated off of a setup because you don't have your second gospel. So if you're looking to perform at a high level in Guild War, then I would go ahead and pick up the second gospel. If not, and let's just say you're just gonna get your top 90k and call it, or like you're a top 120k, whatever the rankings are below 90k, I'm not sure. Gamer, then I would say some of these other picks are more valuable. Like if you're missing Zeta or you're missing Percival, I'm gonna say that's infinitely more valuable to pick up than like a second gospel. Um, Assuming you're not like an outright water main. But yeah, that's my TLDR on Gabriel. That weapon also as well, by the way, excellent in full auto burst and high level content. Definitely a great weapon. Kaguya, damn. So this one I don't want to talk too much about. This character was very, very strong when they were first released. They've been, I don't want to say she's been falling off, but you don't really see her too much anymore, as far as I know, especially with Raphael being added to the game. Um, I mean, when you're Ogi looping with Wind, it's like Raph, Catzelia, and then like Charlotta. I think you could use Kaguya. I know she was used in Guild War as well last year for some of the 250 comps. I don't know if she was. I think she was in the fastest ones for 250, but you didn't really use her like at 200 and before. Like you didn't use her in that content. And in terms of like full auto, I don't see this character used in full auto. I'm trying to think of a raid that you would full auto. What the fuck is the Earth Rebound? Siegfried. I don't think you use this in Siegfried at all. I use shit like, yeah, like Shion. Or is this just to join? Yeah, you don't use this character in like that at all for the most part. And then even then, for other raids like what's the M3 raid? Yggdrasil, you don't use her at Yggdrasil either. You use other characters. So as a character, I would say high level she's strong. slash competitive, you could definitely run Kaguya and you're not gonna feel bad about it. I know she was core for the Chrysor setup in Wind for Fa Zero and for Hexa as well, I believe. But again, now that Wind has kind of moved on to the Ogi nuking type of setup, you could definitely sorry, I'm still sick. You can definitely run some of the other Wind characters like Raphael and Charlotta and Catzelia, and you'll be good. Even before Raphael, you had Wind Mirren and Eustace for the Rising Force stuff, so you have those options as well. So she's not like a must have for high level, but for burst and full auto, she's definitely underwhelming. Her weapon, this is a Exalto character, so again, I'm gonna say for her it's a little different because in those Rising Force Ogi comps that you run in high level content, you don't run fan. You just run stuff like Charlotta swords, either Ewiyar beaks or Galleon. I think is that weapon a staff? Whatever Summer Galleon's like weapon type is, you run her weapon. And Sky Ace, you run like those weapons. Like you run two of each. That's kind of your core. Even if you're missing like one of the weapons, you're not really gonna run a fan because you're not autoing in those setups unless you're clearing like a TA omen or something like that. So it's not very. I'm not gonna say it's not strong in high level, but it's not good in those compositions where you're OGing. So then that leaves you with Burst, which this is very core for Burst, and for Full Auto, which this is pretty good in Full Auto as well, even just as a grid piece and not as a main hand, is very strong. Um, so I would say for priority, if you're like a one player that is bursting with wind or flying with wind a lot, it's high priority. If you're running a high level in wind a lot, but you don't really use it for like your daily full autos, or you don't like really hit earth raids like that, I would say just grabbing the character and having one of these as like possible main hand is fine. Um, I think that's about it. You want two. I don't know if three fans is still like a super big thing. I'm gonna wager that if you're a win main, get three fans. If you're not a win main, I think two is fine. For most of these also, it's like 1 to 2 is fine. Cosmos, very strong high level character. This is not a burst unit. This is not a full auto unit unless you're doing Agostia. But outside of Agostia, you're not really full autoing with her. You're doing like skill nuke comps with like Mugen and Ilnat, Lucifer, um, things of that nature. But in terms of like Fa Zero, Hexa, debatably sub HL, you are definitely running this character because she deals with a lot of the what is it like debuff hit number. She generates her own like charge bar to help you like loop Ogi. She double Ogi, so that helps you funnel charge bar into other characters. She does a shit ton of damage. It's a very strong unit overall for high level content. If you're a light player, it's a must pick up if you play a light high level. Um, her weapon is also as of recently, I think it's gotten pretty phased out. It was pretty good back in the day, and for me personally, I still use this weapon in high level content because Medium Majesty is pretty good, and then of course the special CA damage cap um buff is pretty good as well. Other than that, I would say this weapon is not like a must-have. Of course, if you're grabbing the character, you're gonna get the weapon. But if you're like not a light player and you're just grabbing the character, so you can say farm Agostia or play light high level and be useful while you're getting your light tiding for your Opus, I would say it's not even really worth it to invest in this weapon. Just save your bars. But the character is still very strong for high level. Um, she enables you to do cool things like solo Fa Zero and solo Hexa, I believe. So she's good for that as well. But overall, I would say this is like a decent pickup if you're looking to get into light high level and you are a light player. It's definitely like a great pickup. Ewiyar, I mean, this character is falling off. There's better full auto units nowadays for Wind, and you're pretty much only grabbing this character for the Exalto, not Exalto, the PNS. You run like 1 to 2 of these in your burst slash full auto grids. In high level, I don't think you even run any. You could situationally run some, like maybe like one. Um, or if you're running like Chrysler, I think if you're running Chrysler 2, this runs like 1 or 2. But outside of that, um, I would say this is like a high priority weapon for bursting and full autoing. For high level, not so much. And in terms of the character, again, the character is pretty much fallen off. There's like better full auto units for Wind in Summer Galleon, Neo 150, Narmaya, um, I should just leave my Granblue account open. Like what do I full auto with? Vampy, V Grim, characters like that. Even like Wind Lich is still pretty usable, so I would say that they have more priority over Ewiyar as a character. So if you're a Wind main and you don't have like your PNS, definitely like pick that up. If it was a choice between like Charlotta or Ewiyar or Kaguya, I would wager that grabbing the Exaltos has higher priority than grabbing the PNS. Because nowadays you can get supplemental damage from other sources. Um, and then Charlotta Sword being the reactor type weapon, we'll get to her later. But yeah, in terms of like overall pick, like if you had none of these characters and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get Uriel, I would say Uriel's like lower on the list for sure. Um, you're just grabbing this character for like the weapon, like one or two copies, and that's pretty much it. Third copy is useless. You're never gonna run three copies of it, so just stick to one or two. Luo, I never see this character get used ever, even when this character was first released. Never saw this character got used. I saw like gameplay videos of him like being used, like oh we'll use him like for fun here. Don't really. This character's not getting used. All right, you're using like explain this. Either the Ogi characters in Horus, Zoe, uh, Cosmos, and Nahon, or you're bursting with like Mugen, Florence, Nahon, things of that nature. Even in full auto, you're using like Ilnot, Lucifer, Mugen, Nahon, that type of thing. So this character really doesn't have a place in the current metagame or for any raid in particular. You can use him for things like Fall Zero and Hexa and Sub HL, but again, if you have those other options, he's he's like a fallback option, kind of like Sandalphon's character. He's like a fallback option nowadays. Um, his weapon, I actually don't know too much about this weapon. I wonder if they have the Bahamut high level like uh guide or grids. Let's see. So what is light running nowadays? Okay, so light still runs 3 with Aura. Okay. So light runs 3. 'Cause I was gonna say, I think you only run 3 of these in burst. If you're not running burst, you're not really running too many of these. Um, I know for high level, I'm running like 1 max. If you have no other weapons, 2 is fine. Even 3 is like workable. Like if you're a player that had 3 of these weapons before, and you're running 3, it's fine. But in the context of a grand pick ticket, if you already have 2, I would advise not to get a third unless again like you're a light player that's bursting in like Bahamut high level and things of that nature. Then it's cool, get a third. But if you're not a light player, then just grabbing like 1 is fine. But even then, as I've mentioned before, even like the 1 is getting phased out in like high level content. Um and in terms of burst, light's not really bursting too many things. And in terms of full auto, it's pretty decent. You can run 1 or 2 for full auto. But even looking at my own full auto comps, like let's see here, what do I use for? I use this for Fediel. Yeah, like I'm running double FS, double Eden, double Harmonia, and then like a Rin. And then in Bahamut high level, I was running this, and this uses double FS, double Harmonia, double Rin, single Eden. So yeah, even like in like my full auto comps and stuff, I'm not really using Lua weapon. Is that optimal? Not 100% certain, but it's you don't need it. Like if you're a player, like I have nothing else to ticket, I wouldn't even argue that you need this. You'd be better off grabbing like second overrider or second causality driver or even like a third if it's like your main element Exalto. Grabbing a third as opposed to grabbing this first for the character is not even worth it. You might as well just go invest in like fleshing out a grid, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, in terms of burst, character's ass. In terms of full auto, you could use it, but only if you're like missing all the other characters that I've aforementioned. And in terms of high level, again, if you're missing like the aforementioned characters, especially the Ogi team, then you can use him. But but I would advise against it. I would not take it this character. There's probably like for 99% of you, there's probably something better to take it. HalMal, For the character, this character is still pretty good for like solo content for like if you're soloing sub HL or even Hexa, I believe she was used for like a Hexa solo as well. But in terms of like full auto, I mean, you could use her for Cosmos full auto. There's other options now, so you don't need her for it. Um, but other than that, I would say she's like a high level character. Like you could use her for like your sub HL or your Hexa. She was used back then. And even like not so much Fa Zero. I wouldn't really use this character in Fa Zero. So I would just say for those two raids in particular, you're not using her in Burst, you're not using her in Full Auto. You're pretty much grabbing this character nowadays for the weapon, and even the weapon is like pretty phased out. Like when I'm looking at my high level compositions here, I think as a starter piece, it's pretty solid. Like it's fine to use. Um, I'm using two here for Hexa. Not really. I'm using one. I'm using one for Hexa. You can use two for sub HL. What was I using? I was using three, but this is an old party. I would say you want one to two. The only place where I'm using three of these, like based off the parties I'm looking at, was a Cosmos full auto, and even that you don't even need three. I would wager you just run two, and then you run like two Agonize or two Fediel weapon. Um, I would wager that that's better. So I would say one to two is fine. If you're a dark player and you have one, I think having just one is fine because you probably have other weapons that you can use in your grid to supplement having the one. If you're not a dark player and you want like a base level dark grid to start out to do like dark high level or dark full auto, I think two is fine. Would grabbing a second one over grabbing like a second of like a Lord of Fire or like Knight of Ice or any type of weapon like that, is it worth it? Not really. I would say one is fine nowadays. But if you have like nothing else to take it, grabbing a second one's like not the worst. Even like for your dark full auto comps and whatnot. So grabbing a second's like not the worst. But I would say in terms of the weapon for burst, high level, and full auto, the weapon's more used in burst for the special cap up, more so than any other thing. It's a decent HP slot in and defense slot in if you like again have nothing else to slot in. Other than that, I would just say that this character, like for the character and for the weapon, unless you're looking to play dark, it's pretty skippable comparatively to like the other options. I wish I did like a tier list. I should have like a tier list for like overall, but that's fine. Um, Michael, this character is pretty good. Um, was used a lot for Siete Raid back in the day for bursting. She still might be used for it. I'm not particularly certain. Me personally, I full auto that raid nowadays, and I use Percival, Zeta, and Aglavale. Um, and then sometimes Aglavale, or not Aglavale. What do I use? Let me pull it up. I definitely use Aglavale and Percival because those characters are gross as fuck. Um, Aglavale, Ragozo and Percival, and then Ragozo dies and brings out Alanen. And then I think you could also just skip Ragozo and just put in Zeta. But this character, if you're bursting it, I think you still kind of use her for like the Berserker burst and whatnot. I'm trying to think of like anywhere else you'd use this character. I can't think of anywhere else you'd use this character. I think you use her for Belial Full Auto actually, because she has a delay on skill 3, and her skill 3 procs automatically whenever you consume 3 of whatever the fuck this is, which you get them from characters oging. So you do use her for that. But outside of that, you're pretty much, again, a lot of these PNS characters have kind of gotten power crept, like as a unit. So you're pretty much picking her for the weapon. For this weapon, you definitely run two, like, damn near everywhere. If not two, then one for sure. Um, Especially for burst, especially for full auto. For high level, could be a little different. As we saw before, most high level content you're running like triple Lord of Flames, double or triple Overrider, and then you can run like double Crimson Scale or single depending on what you're doing. Especially for more carry oriented setups, I think if you're running like triple Lord of Flyer or Lord of Flames, double Overrider, you probably want to go a little bit more defensive if you like have to like hard carry a raid and you're not using Higurashi, it becomes a little more difficult. So swapping out the second Crimson Scale for something a little more defensive like a Mugen Sword that's awakened is viable. Um, but yeah, I would say like for the character, not really that worth it. For the weapon, pretty worth it, especially if you play fire. Like if fire again is in your top three elements, picking up one or two copies of this is definitely pretty high priority, especially if fire is like your main element. Like if it's your main two element, very high priority pickup for the weapon. If it's like your third most played element, it's okay like to pick up if your other two elements are already fleshed out. Um, but yeah, that's Michael. For Charlotta, this character was used a lot in Guild War for Nightmare 250 full auto and even like for mashing manual as well. Um, Characters used a lot in high level, not used at all for burst, not really used for full auto either. Mostly a high level character, mostly used for sustain on her skill 1 and for battery generation on her skill 2. To help funnel some of the Ogi comps because Wind is more so gravitating towards like Rising Force Ogi compositions for these high level raids and these higher end like Nightmare 200, Nightmare 250 Guild War bosses. So I would say Charlotta's a very good pickup like as a character if you're running Wind high level a lot. And if you even if you're not using the character, the weapon's very good. 1 to 2 is good enough. I would say 2 is optimal most of the time, but even just having 1 is very very good if you're playing Wind. I would say like for the majority of the time, it's a very good weapon for burst, full auto, and high level. So again, that makes it even more higher priority. And going just based off of that, I would say that again, Charlotta's probably one of those characters where if you're missing every character, if you're ticketing her, it's pretty valuable, like even just as for the character and for the weapon. Um, Other than that, I would say again, if you don't play Wind like that, especially if you don't play Wind HL, you could probably skip this character and like grab something else, like flesh out one of your other primal grids. Percival, this character, God, I was excited to talk about this character. This character is fucking disgusting, okay? This character is used in Fire Burst, Full Auto, and high level content. He was released fucking September 30th, 2022. He has been a mainstay in legitimately every party in Fire forever. I cannot think of a situation where I'm like, damn, let me not put Percival in my party. Like, even, um, my Ewiyar full auto, I have him back roll because Ragazzo dies, and then he brings out Percival, and then Percival's skill 2 is the 40%, so you don't get blown up by the trigger that wants you to do Faded Chain. Like, and then he just blows it up anyway with skill 3 plus orange button. Like, you just kill it in like 2 more turns. Its character's disgusting, right? Does a shit ton of damage. He enables singed comps, and honestly, I would wager that singed comps even exists because he exists. Because whenever he gets 7 stacks of singed, he activates the big nuke at the end of the turn, 1000% fire damage, and then he inflicts stackable debuffs and then gives you the damage amp debuff. So this character is disgusting. Um, the skill 2 is disgusting. It gives you so much damage mitigation, like on that turn, having all the damage go to 0. It essentially gives you a free turn in a lot of situations where like, oh, well, I fucked up. Okay, cool. Click Percival 2. Um, Even in Guild War, it allows you to bypass so much shit. You just Percival 2, boom, bing the boss into like 50%. Normally the boss will like giga buff itself or like at 35%. Usually the boss will like do a big like high damage attack. Just Percy to it and then you bypass it. Situationally, the Petrified is pretty good as well for like some full auto scenarios. I think Tiamat isn't resistant to it. Um, so situationally, the Petrified can be useful. And then, of course, here we go with Percival's skill 3. Crazy, bruh. 30% echo one time, but you know, it's there. And then 100% fire attack up. Crazy, bruh. He basically forces your party to do damage. The skill itself does damage, and it's literally tag team. It's tag team that nukes and buffs your party. It's a disgusting skill. Um, he has like his own like Seraphic mod amp, GTA, and Dispel Cancel like built in just passively. And for the trade off of not getting charge bargain upon normal attacks, but if you're ogging with other characters, that helps him generate his own charge bar. And then of course with his skill 1, he gets 20% bar. When the cinch stacks are 5 or above, it activates twice, so you get 40% bar. Um, so that's something to keep in mind as well. The singe damage also isn't that bad either, by the way. Like once you get it up to like I would say 5 or higher, the damage is pretty good at the end of turn if you're taking a lot of turns. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much. I mean, there's not much to say about this character. If you don't have this character, even if you don't play fire like that, I would wager that this is one of the characters where this character is probably if this character ever gets power crept, that character would have to be disgustingly broken. And even then, you probably wouldn't kick out Percival. You would just run that character with Percival. Like, this character does so much shit. He's very simple and easy to use, but he just does so much shit. Not even, and I failed to mention this. This skill isn't a one-time usage. Characters like Raziel and Anilla, those skills are one-time, like, tag team usages, and they have so much, like, hoops and loops you gotta jump through. This shit is, like, reusable. All you gotta do is Ogi to gain your King's Blaze effect again, and you're good. Not to mention he starts the battle with King's Blaze, so you can just use this shit off rip. Disgusting character, disgusting. His weapon, disgusting. You're using 2 to 3 of these everywhere. Burst, full auto, high level, 2 to 3. Like crazy. And it's not even like something like Charlotta weapon either, where you need like 15 skills or like what's another annoying reactor weapon? Like Galleon's weapon, where you need to run 3 of the same weapon. You guys gotta at least run 4 of the same weapon type. Which I mean, in Fire is pretty easy because isn't Fire's Opus Axe? Let me check. Pretty sure Fire's Opus is an axe. Um, yeah, it's an axe. So you literally run Opus plus 2 Crimson Scale plus 1 more axe is easy. You're running triple Lord of Flames anyway, so you just run 1 more sword, usually Ultima Sword, or Celestial Sword. Now we have Celestial Axe as well, so that makes proccing off of Axe pretty easy. Um, Crazy. The requirement's not even that difficult. SS like triple S tier. If I could think of any other character, no other character is on the level of Percival. Honestly, this character is the best character in the game. Like for all the things that the character offers, crazy. Best character in the game. Um, Dog, this video is so fucking long. We're already at 50 minutes. Um, Damn, I don't even know what I want to do with the rest of these characters. I mean, I'll go from the bottom up because some of these characters, like Catalina, completely negligible character. Having Merg Cage as a one of to help like get TA, pretty useful. Outside of that, would not take it this character. Rakam would not take it this character. Benitia's Power Cup would not take it. EO would not take it this character. Character's ass. Gamba again, if you're trying to hit like TA shit, could be situationally useful, and it has attack awakening cage, so that could be situationally useful. But again, I would not take it this character. Would not take it this character, even for Love Eternal. Would not take it this character. Um, Yugen would not take it this character. Even AK is like pretty ass nowadays. Would not take it him. Character's ass. Black Knight would not take it this character. Blood Gang, you're pretty much never running it. I use it personally for Hexa because I caged it, but other than that, would not take it this character. Zoe, that's my baby boo. God bless her heart. Would not take it this character. Weapons ass. Character is not used ever. Would not take it her. Alicia. Reunion could be situational, like as a good like one of. But again, if you're gonna ticket her for reunion, you might as well ticket Charlotta for Clam. So again, would not ticket this character. Lucio, having 1 or 2, even 3 Edens could be useful. Um, I would only ticket this if you're a light player though, because you're only using Eden for light burst. So if you're not bursting with light, would not ticket this character. Even then, the character like as a standalone, pretty good for full auto. But outside of that, again, if you're not using, like, I would not ticket this character. If you're missing like the character, he's not the worst. Again, you use him for light full auto, but even then, again, pretty low priority. There's so many better pickups you can get. It's just one of those things where like if you have some of like these other characters, there's almost no way that Lucio's dodged you since 2016 unless like you just started your account like recently. And if you did do that, I would wager you're missing a lot of like some of these characters, like Naramaya for example. And I would much rather you get her or Nehan or uh like Lancelot for his weapon or like Fediel or any of these characters, pretty much. So again, I would not ticket him. Orchid, Parazonium was pretty good back in the day, even like as a caged, like non-boosted grid. Caged Parazonium's pretty good, but I would not take it this character. You do use her actually for like her skill 3 for like fire burst, but you could probably just supplement with some other character and just like killing them off. Um, so again, would not take it this character. Sturm would not take it this character. Ixaba, I mean, I think fire probably like what one or two Ixabas nowadays, and the character is like not even good. So I would not take it this character, just making it easy for you. Drang would not take it this character. Ball can be situationally good in like some Ogi scenarios, but I mean, even then, would not I would not take it this character even for the weapon. The weapon again, if you have it, it can be situationally good. Character's outdated. Would not take it this character. Vera would not take it this character either. Weapons power crept if you have it for whatever reason, or like you have like cage. Like I have a cage certificate. Yeah, certificates. I don't even use it. I don't use it. So and I don't use the character. Even if you were missing a bunch of other light units or whatever, as a fallback, I mean, you could use this character. You could use her for like Fall Zero and Hexa, because I used to use her for Fall Zero and Hexa. Outside of that, but like if you are ticketing a character for Fall Zero and Hexa, you're better off just ticketing Nahon if you don't have Nahon. And if you have Nahon, you could definitely run. Uh, I mean, you could ticket Cosmos or Sandalphon. Like Sandalphon and Cosmos are infinitely better pickups. And if you are picking those characters up, or you already have them, then you shouldn't be ticketing Vera for her for like the unit. So again, I would skip it. Olivia, if you're a dark player, um, Fallen Swords are great for burst. Even for high level, sometimes you could use a Fallen Sword for the multi attack awakening if you like need it for that. There were some situations where that was good. But overall, I would not ticket this character unless you're a dark player. Then I would ticket it. Fallen Sword is very core for burst, and sometimes in Guild War, um, a lot of times, especially for soloing, Twilight Terror, her skill 1 debuff that gives the boss in action for special attacks, very good. Um, Other than that, overall, I would not ticket this character unless again you're a dark player, and you're missing like a second Fallen Sword. But even then, I would wager that unless you're like quite literally a dark main, you're better off just getting something else, like fleshing out another primal grid. So like, I would overall not ticket this character unless you're like just missing the unit and you're like looking to perform in Dark Guild War. But even then, we might get like some power creep by then. Alexiel, this character was used in Guild War for like Ogi setups. Outside of that, I don't really see this character getting used. I mean, you could use her in like stuff like Fall Zero and whatnot. Um, but overall, this character, I would not take this character. There's so many better tickets for this grand ticket. I would not do it, especially if you're an Earth player. You're not particularly using this character. You're better off ticketing Galleon or Uriel. So there's that. Even Sandy, like World Ender, is still used from time to time. So there's that. Or if you're missing Kaintana, Kaintana is used as a one of as well. But overall, I would not take it this character unless all your other grids are fleshed out and you're missing the character and you play Earth. That's when I would take it the character. Kain, if you don't have Kain, you're ticketing him for Kaintana, and even Kaintana is used like as a one of or a three of. Um, the only reason you're using three is if you're like a diehard Earth stand. Other than that, would not ticket this character. Just make it easy for you. Folia would not ticket this character unless you are ticketing her for like a second Folia bow. In that case, I think it's a pretty good pickup. Even if you're picking her up for like the first Folia bow, I think the first Folia bow is more impactful than the second one because you can run stuff like Wamda Spears to supplement like the missing crit. We just had Yachima banner, so if you have like double Exalto, um, you can run two Exalto plus Folia bow plus either one or two Europa spears, or you can run one spear and like a Sen staff. Um, the Valentine Sen, you can run her staff. I've been seeing that a lot. So if you're looking again to perform really well in Water Guild War and you only have 0 to 1 of these Folia bows, I would say it's a pretty good pickup, but only if you're looking to perform in Water Guild War. You could just supplement the crit via something else in your grid. If you're running like crit in high level or like for burst and whatnot. So that's the only situation I would take in that character. Europa, Very good, very strong unit for both full auto and high level content. For burst, not so much, but I would wager that a lot of this full auto content is quote unquote burst. There are some scenarios where you're turning off her 2 and 1 and just have her 3 up and you're just kind of like bursting through a raid. But in those scenarios, um, you could just run like Weta, Poseidon, Dragon, Yachi. Like there's better burst units. Um, what else? She also semi enables Gabriel. Sorry, I'm like sick because Gabriel gives that insane fire damage reduction on her skill 2, and then Europa converts all damage to fire except for plain damage, and she gives you a 5k shield, so it helps you upkeep Gabriel's buffs and her own skill 2 buffs. So I would say this character is very good. Um, and then of course her weapon is very strong as well for crit grids. So I would actually say this character is, if you're a water main, definitely get it for the character or for like the for the weapon. If you're looking to get a second spear, I think second spear can be useful, but I think now that Yachima's weapon's out, second spear has kind of gotten phased out. If you're a single Yachima haver, then having that second spear is more valuable. But if you have two Yachima weapons, then that second spear becomes less valuable. Um, and the weapon also is very good for full auto and burst, not so much for high level. I don't really use this weapon in high level. It only gives you crit and DA. Yeah, and then big stamina too. So you don't really use this weapon at high level that much. But you do use it sometimes for like for Paladin main hand. Because it is a spear for like Mugen FA. Because it does give you shield and unchallenged. So that's pretty useful. But other than that, I would ticket this character. I would say this character is pretty high priority for Water Guild War if you're gonna be a full auto player. Or even possibly for just like mashing, like 200. Um, I would just say that she loses some value in Guild Wars simply for the fact that the boss already does fire damage, so you don't need the conversion as much. But the healing and the damage output by her is still pretty good. So overall, pretty good pickup. Shiva, don't take it this character, don't take it the weapon. Um, pretty easy skip. There's better, not because it's innately like bad. I do think the weapon is bad, but um, even like unless you're doing like some Higurashi like Ogi comp, but there's better Ogi weapons like Pop Gun and stuff like that. You would only use Shiva Bow if you're running like Ogi crit, which is very strange. I don't. Maybe there's a situation where you're running that, but even then, I don't think you would ever pick that over a lot of these other characters and weapons. I'm sure some of you are missing something, and if you're not missing something like a lot of these things, you've probably just rolled a lot, and you probably have this weapon maxed out already. So definitely a skip. Grand Fairy skip. Um, Grimnir Vortex is very strong. The character I think is ass. The weapon is very strong. If you're a wind main slash like wind player, two Vortex is definitely very good to have. If you don't have a Vortex, getting one is very good for wind in general. It's a very strong weapon. But you especially for if it's caged. When you attack cage it, very good weapon. Um, so I would say if you're aspiring to build Zeph, it's a must-have to have at least one Vortex. But if you already have the Vortex, it's not worth taking this character for a second one. Again, unless you're like a diehard Wind enjoyer, then getting that second Vortex could be helpful. But there's higher priority tickets like second Sky Ace or like third Kaguya fan, things of that nature. Second Charlotta Sword. Um, you can have those things to think about as well. Whatever benefits you the most for what you're trying to do for that content. Monica, character's ass, but the weapon is very strong in like Rising Force high level setups. You're not really oging with wind anywhere else. Um, at least in the nature where you would use a Sky Ace in that scenario. So I would say one of the two Sky Aces is very good for the Rising Force setup. Other than that, I would say this character is a skip. If you already have one Sky Ace, that's good enough. If you're like a wind enthusiast, getting the second one is useful, again, for the Rising Force setup. Other than that, I would say you're better off fleshing out some other grid. Jean Grant, skip. I mean, you could use her like as a zero button attacker, but even then, like her weapon's ass, I would just skip it. It's not worth it. That's my baby boo, by the way. I fuck Zoe, Jean, near Hacelia. Those are my girls. But hey, sometimes I'm gonna keep it a band with y'all. Dark Solemn skip. You don't use babbles. You don't use the character. The character's falling off. You don't use babbles. I will say Dark Guild War is probably gonna be the second or third Guild War of the year. Maybe she'll get an FLB. Um, so that's something to keep in mind as well. But we'll have plenty of time to like spark the character by then if the FOB is good, and we'll have more information then. But as of now, skip. Noah, character ass, weapon decent for if you're trying to do like a 100% crit grid with FS, outside of H Mugen. The weapon for Mana Diver Manhand's pretty good because it does offer you Echo, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it gives you 15% Echo, um, big crit too, and then of course HP for sustain. So you could run like 2 FS, 2 Noah daggers, and be chilling. But outside of that, um, I would say overall it's a skip. Maybe if you're like looking to get into light, having one copy is nice, but I would wager that there's better light stuff to take it. Like if you're missing like I think Cag weapon's underrated. I would definitely use this more than Noah Dagger. First and second Rin definitely more useful than a Noah Dagger in my opinion. So it's a niche pick. Like if you have nothing else and like you have everything else and you're missing like a few units and they're like not high priority, like for example Mugen or Grand Fairy, Shiva, Folia, like those are your units that you're missing. I would wager it's like pretty tight between Folia Bow and the Noah Dagger. But just because Water Guild War's coming up, I'd wager that Folia Dagger's better, and there's probably situationally in your case too, better pickups than a single Noah Dagger or even a second Noah Dagger as well. So I'm gonna say overall skip. Ray, unless you're playing Dark High Level or you're farming the Martial Trial, whatever, it's a skip. Even the weapon, you sometimes use the weapon nowadays. Like I personally use it for Flaw Zero. You can use it for Hexa as well. Um, but overall, I say this character is a skip unless you play Dark High Level. Um, then you Dark High Level and you have Zosimos. That the requirement is Zosimos. If you don't have Zosimos, it's not worth it. Definitely a skip. If you do have Zosimos and you do play Dark High Level, I mean, you probably already have this character already. But if you don't have this character, she's very very strong. I would grab this character. In that context. But other than that, I would skip it. Even if you do play Dark and you have Zosimos and you're a high level content player, if you're missing something like Percival or Nahon or like uh another good character, Gabriel, I would definitely prioritize them over Ray. Because you can still make Dark High Level work without Ray. So overall, a skip. Mugen, skip. You pretty much use this character to sack in most content. But there's other characters you can sack like Exodus Recom. You can death off a character. You could like run like any character that basically kills himself, like Air, something like that. Water Jean, etc. etc. So skip. Weapons ass. Character for Rhine, pretty ass. The weapon, however, Rhine Fist or Fist of Destruction are pretty good for crit fire. Like getting, because you're going to be running Overriders a lot. So running one or two of these to cap out that crit is pretty good. Um, you're not running this at high level though. And in burst, you're probably running Ixaba. And you're not running this on anything you can't crit on. So I think it loses a lot of value for that. Um, I do want to check here quickly. Uh, is it Mare? Are they all? Yeah, I'm not range. Let's do that. Mm, this one? Okay, yeah. I think you might use it for this. This is Magna. But yeah, even then, you're just running Lord of Fire, Overrider, CS. That just has so much priority that there's no room for Rhine Fist anymore, I think in like current fire content. Like if you're ticketing Rhine because you're a fire player and you already have like the other stuff, I don't see where you're using his weapon anyway. So I would wager you're better off just like fleshing out other grids and other elements with like characters and weapons. So I would say this is a skip overall. Leona, skip. Golden Knight, skip. Sandalphon, good for the weapon. Um, the character pretty ass. I mean, You can use him in like Arcarum or something to skill 1 to give yourself superior LE damage or whatever to like help with some of the burst setups. But I think even that he's gotten crept in to an extent. So I would say overall like a skip. World Ender is pretty good, as I've mentioned, for high level content. I don't know if it's necessary. Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna do Dark Rapture Zero because I know that's one where you need like skill damage trial. Um, let me see. Because I personally use World Ender, but yeah, even then, like yeah, now you can just run Magna. Honestly, it's really like yeah. Where is Titan at? Far Oh, here we go. Yeah, I use one. I think as a one of or two of it's pretty good. I think only a two of again in this context. But definitely a one of. It's like a good weapon to have as a one of. So if you are a Earth player, and I would say Earth is like in your top two most played elements, and you play Earth high level like often, it's a decent one of. And even like in some full auto situations, it's a decent one of. Other than that though, I'd skip it. It's not super high priority. Light Cag character's ass. The weapon is good for light Ogi comps, which you're pretty much only running that in like high level for like Flaw Zero, Hexa, and sometimes Sub HO. And even sometimes Hexa. You can run other stuff in Hexa. I would say this is more so a premium option. Like if you don't have other good stuff to ticket, it does help with crit, and it does give you a big supplemental boost to CA damage. And niche, but you know, maybe good to note, you do get a green pot on Ogi, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Overall, though, I'd skip it. I just think it's a premium option for your light Ogi grid. Narmaya. So this character is very, very, very strong for wind, both for burst and full auto. High level, not so much. You can use her in stuff like sub HL, um, with like neon and I think like plus one. Koro as well for sub HL back in the day. I'm not so sure nowadays. Because again, wind and high level typically Ogis nowadays, but definitely very good for burst and full auto. I would say this is definitely like a top contender. I would say she's like A tier if I could like tier her comparatively to other characters. She's definitely A tier. If you're a wind player and you don't have her, definitely get her. She's like disgusting. Um, Other than that though, I think her weapon's also pretty okay. I did see people were running two of this last Guild War because it is big crit too. Um, and it gives you medium attack as well, and it gives you supplemental damage. So you could run two of these, situationally speaking, and it was good for Nightmare 250. Um, Outside of that, I don't really see where you're running this weapon. I'm trying to think, like again, Siegfried, you're not running this in Siegfried. You're not running this in anything other than possibly sub HL, because again, I know Wind tends to auto in that raid more so than Ogi. Where's the... So yeah, for full auto, you do run two, which makes sense. Rune Slayer, you're not using this, and then Romp, you're not using this. Um, but for Glory, yeah, I mean, you can definitely run two of them. Um, I think that's pretty much the only place you're gonna run two of these nowadays, unless you're playing like Glory for full auto and something else as well. Other than that though, I would say that it's a better pickup than some stuff like say Wilmos or Cag or Golden Knight, etc., etc. She's definitely like a A tier pick if you have like if you're missing the character or you just kind of want to build into Zeph crit, pretty good. Nahon, very, very, very good character used in light burst, situationally full auto and high level. Um, Very core for burst and for high level, situational for full auto. The weapon is very, very, very good for high level as well, and for full auto. Not so much burst, but having the supplemental skill damage and the buff to the cap as well is very strong when coupled with characters such as Horus and um, Cosmos, because they do a lot of skill nuking after their Ogis, and just passively at the end of turn. Even like Kengo and Chrysor, they have a lot of skill damage sometimes. When using them, especially Chrysor, so that's something to keep in mind as well. But even the character itself, very good buffs on his 1 and 2, and then double strike to the party. Even himself, he thought he had high, or he has low MA, but the buffs are disgusting. Like 30% perp attack, 50% bonus light damage, supplement damage. Very, very good character. He enables Ogi looping because he gives you 100% charge bar gain up, um, and GTA as well. So very, very strong um character as well. I would argue that again, if light isn't your, even if you don't play light like in your top two Ellies, even if it's like your third most played, or if you're looking to play light high level or I don't know, burst with light for like Guild War, he's a great pickup. Other than that, I would say he's like in general B tier. If you actively play light like that, he's definitely S tier. Like if you play a lot of light, and if you just kind of play light, like you dabble in it. Like for me personally, I play it to fill a role. Like if they're missing like a light player, I'll go play light like in a once in a blue moon. I would say he's like good for that as well. But for the most part, there's definitely higher value picks like Percival, Charlotta, Gabriel, things of that nature. Poseidon, character is mid. I mean, he's good for like zero button attacking. So for like EX plus or just like splitting spirit attack on Mana Diver, things of that nature, he's good for that. Other than that, not the best character. I wouldn't even use him in high level nowadays. He's just pretty much there for GTA and then the normal attack 3-hit damage to random foes, pretty good for that. Atlantis is a good one-of weapon. You can run two situationally if you're like really spamming turns and playing on low HP. But one of is pretty good. I would say one of is pretty optimal in most high level content. Even with Yachima being added to the mix, I think just having it as a one of is pretty good. Other than that, though, I wouldn't say he's super high priority. In terms of Water Guild War, if you're using him for EX Plus, he's pretty good, but you don't need him for EX Plus. And Atlantis is, if you're gonna be doing solo 200, solo 250, Atlantis is gonna be pretty good, especially for full auto. Other than that, though, not really going to be used. So I'd say he's pretty low priority, even as far as Guild War goes. Lich, character is very mid nowadays. Both for, especially for burst. High level, you can use her. Full auto, you can use her, but more so for, why is she so tall? What the hell? How tall is Lich? My bad. Anyway, um, you could use her at high level. You can use her in full auto. She's more so the most useful for high level. But even then, Dark has so many better staple units like Fediel, Orlogia, Ray, uh, Kate, Delafil, Satyr. There's just better options nowadays. Um, the weapon, however, is very good still in Dark. You typically run two, no matter where you are, whether it's high level, burst, or full auto. You're running two of these. So if you're a Dark player, or you're just looking to finish off your like 6 element PNS Exalto reactor type of grids, even if you're Magna as well, I forgot to mention, even for Magna players, these weapons are very high priority because they're not like a Magna or Primal mod. They're like general mod. Like the supplemental damage isn't hinged upon anything. Neither is the voltage or the cap up. So very high priority as well for like Magna players as well. So I would wager that if you are looking to finish your pain and suffering type weapons, or you're a dark player, this is a very good pick. Otherwise, I would say it's a pretty easy skip, either because you already have the weapons, or you just don't care about dark. Lancelot, the character's pretty decent. Whoopsie, opening the new tab. Character's pretty decent. You're not running him in high level. You're running him in full auto. You're not running him in burst. Even for full auto, I mean, he's power cut by other characters nowadays, and his weapon is very good for those characters that he got power cut by. Um, I think two maximum. One is very good. Two is situationally optimal, but even if you're just running two because you're missing like other grid components, two is very strong as well. I would definitely pick up this character for his weapon for Guild War if you're looking to be competitive as a Varda player. Or if you play water like in your top two, top three elements and you're running it in high level, you're running it in full auto, getting a copy of his weapon is very good. So I would say he's a very good pickup for the weapon. The character's whatever. Fediel is a must-have for dark high level. Um, situationally for dark full auto. Uh, her weapon is, hmm, her weapon's good. It's definitely a premium agonize, but I would argue that her weapon is situationally core because of the Trium, or the Fandango rather, the boost to TA. For Dark, we have a pretty big lack of TA. Fediel's Field gives it, and then of course Ultima gives it. But there's characters like Orologian nowadays where they have GTA. You could just run Bubs in your sub summons for MC, and that will pretty much take care of their TA issue. Um, and then outside of that, I mean, it's just kind of helpful because the skill one is very good, and the TA is like a bonus. Like you kind of just get the best of both worlds. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Me personally, I'm running one to two of these in like the majority of my high level grids because the majority of Dark, even in full auto especially, is skill nuking. The only place where I'm not running this weapon are like burst scenarios. So like for example, when I'm hitting Bahamut high level, but I mean even in Akasha, I run double Hades, and you're running things like Sidala and Bowman, so I'm running one in my Akasha grid as well. So situationally, you could even slot that in for burst in double Hades scenarios. So if you're a Dark player or you're looking to play Dark high level, um, it's a must pick. Like you have to have this character. Um, Other than that, though, I'd wager she's not super high priority. Like if you don't play Dark at all, she's not high prio. Um, Guild Wars, she is pretty good for like full auto because of her field. But even then, I don't think people use her a ton. We didn't use her a ton last Dark Guild War. You could, but the fact that Guild War is not V2, so her shield once it's gone for 16 turns or however long is it's very high cooldown, kind of blows. Um, so even as a Guild War unit, she's pretty mid. But again, if you play Dark or you're looking to play Dark and you're looking to build Hades, it's like a must pick character. This character is disgusting. She's been out since 2021 and she's still used in like damn near every high level party, if not every high level party. Um, Wilnas, his weapon got power corrupt. Like it's not the best. I think if you're oging correct, yeah, if you're oging, it's a decent like one of, but you don't really need it per se. And the character nowadays again is power corrupt, so you don't particularly need him. The only place I can think of where you like want to use Wilnas is like raw full auto and like Siete Berserker comps where you're trying to stack Singe pretty fast. Other than that, I'd say overall this character's a skip. Pretty easy skip. Uni, the character's pretty power crept nowadays. Um, but Harmonia is still very good as a two of. You're typically running one to two of these weapons, so if you are a light player or you're looking to build light in any capacity, whether you're Magnet or Primal, definitely a very good weapon to get. As a one or two of. Two is optimal in most scenarios. Outside of high level, but even in high level, two is pretty good. But again, the character is not really used too much. You can use her in high level, like Sub HL, Hexa, and Fa Zero, but there's better characters. I mean, if you're ticketing it for the character, I wouldn't. If you're ticketing it for the grid piece, it's a solid pickup for sure. On to the last two characters, Galleon and Wamdis. Galleon's a great character for high level. She's used in some of the fastest setups, I believe, like with Raziel and Olivia. Um, Even if you don't have those characters, you can still use her in high level. You're primarily grabbing this character for her weapon, which I'm just gonna go ahead and say you need three of these. Trying to do hoops and jumps and loops to build three of another weapon to proc this passive when you only have one or two of them is not worth it. I'm just gonna say outright, two bare minimum, three. I would just say get three. So if you're one of those players that are looking to flesh out your Titan grid because you only have one or two of these and you're trying to get to that third one, I would say it's a very safe pick. I spoke to my boy Hilo recently and he agrees that Medusa weapon it's not ass, but you don't really need to run it per se. Like it's nice to have in your grid, but you're like three Galleon is much better than three Medusa weapons in almost any context or scenario. So I don't see this weapon getting phased out because I think we're pretty much done with all the Exaltos, reactors, and PNS. We're done. So unless they give us like a new like grid piece weapon type that's not specifically like for main hand, like Fenny staff or Raphael weapon. The Galleon staffs are like pretty much here to stay. Um, but yeah, if you're looking to like build out your Titan grid, definitely a must pick. If you're picking it for the character and you're playing Earth high level, it's decent, but you're mostly picking it for the weapon. So I would say it's pretty good for the weapon, by itself. For again for burst, full auto, and high level, by the way, not just high level. It's very very mainstay for all Earth content. And then last but not least, we have Wamu. Another win for Wam because this weapon is good for Race Vilgar burst, and it's good for burst in general. Even as a one of because of the special damage cap up. Um, and then in terms of the character, I mean, you're using Wom just like nowhere, dog. You can use her for like Mugen, like Kengo, and that's pretty much it. I mean, you could use her in like Hexa solo and Sub HL solo, but that's like pretty much it. The character is pretty ass. I'd wager. I mean, she's good in the situations you use her, but you don't need her. Like you can just use like literally some other character, like Europa for example. You can just use Europa in place of her because she's mostly for sustain. Um, but the weapon, it's a very good like 1 to 2 of. I think 3 has gotten phased out since the introduction of Yakima. But if you're in an environment where you can't crit, then I think 3 is still very strong. Um, for both burst, full auto, and high level. If you for some reason in a high level raid can't crit, if they like make it that way, I think 3 is still very good. But yeah, so much for my fucking condensed and concise video. By the way, we're at 1 hour and 26 minutes. But yeah, that's pretty much my grand ticket pick like list. Um, if you have any questions, I know I kind of like glazed over stuff because I have to go to work here. I didn't get to eat today, so that's fun. But if there's anything else you want me to go over, like please leave a comment, hit me up on Discord, DM me on Twitter or something, and I'll gladly answer. But yeah, overall, uh, I don't think there's anything else specific I want to talk about. But yeah, that's gonna conclude the video. Again, if you have any questions, leave a comment below. Like, comment, subscribe, spread it out. If you have a friend that's like starting Granblue and you don't think you can give solid advice or you need like a second opinion, shoot this video over to them. I don't know how long the ticket is up for. Let me see. 24 hours, so perfect. So this video is gonna go up in about 30 minutes. So yeah, perfect. Um, if you want me to leave in the description, I mean, maybe I'll do this anyway. Again, I have to go to work soon. But I will try to timestamp where I'm talking about each character. That's a lot of work though, but we'll see. Yeah, thank you so much for watching, and peace out.